Ooh, there's so many ways to go with this. Um, First, the fear that we won't find better. Even though we know it's not for us, even though we're not fully happy, a lot, especially women have been conditioned to believing that, well, all guys are trash and all guys are going to hurt you. And so better to deal with the trash, than to put yourself out there for new trash to deal with. And so that leads a lot of women to settling, as well as just validating the what's lacking in that relationship due to what they saw in their parents' relationship. A lot of people saw their mothers settle, saw dysfunction in their childhood, and so now I've seen situations where a woman has told herself, "Well, I still have it better than my mother, so I shouldn't complain. I should just be happy that it's not as bad as she had it." So much of a lack of healing causes people to settle, and it's just a horrible cycle that so many people are in.
Can I just jump in on that thing that you said? Because that's so strong. Do you think that there's something about the fact that if we've had a dysfunctional relationship in the past, or if we've seen it in our parents, that part of us doesn't necessarily know if there is going to be better? And so I don't know if this is the best. So for instance, my ex-boyfriend, before I met my husband, he would tell me on the daily, you're never going to find someone that loves you as much as I love you. And I believed it. And so it was the fear of, can I even find better than him? So maybe it's better just to stay with him so that I don't end up by myself with nothing.
Absolutely. And that's the thing. It's like women are settling for a piece of a man rather than hoping they can receive a whole man. And so, they'll deal with the nonsense. Not to mention, you have a lot of women who are surrounded by other women who also accept settling. So essentially, I always tell women, if you go to another woman and ask her, should I stay or should I leave? And she has held on to a relationship that she doesn't belong in, she's going to tell you to stay because she has to validate why she's still there. She can't tell you to leave when she couldn't look at herself in the mirror and take that step. So many people are being given bad advice. And like you said, been brainwashed in various ways. As your example, it may have been their partner who drilled it in their head, you won't find anything better. And they really start to believe that. And it gets too scary to take a chance, so to speak, on putting yourself out there, being alone again, and hoping you can find better.
Yeah. God, that's amazing. Okay, so let's start unpacking all of this. Where do we need to start from, right? Because there's different elements. There's somebody of making the choice now. They're single. They're trying to find someone that they, want to fall in love with. So I'd like to go over the fundamentals that you believe that every single relationship must have, to give us that fighting chance, if you will. What do you think are the absolute fundamentals that a relationship needs that you've never heard of any successful relationship ever working out without these things?
Okay, so and let me first, to put it in proper context, when we say successful, I want people to understand staying together does not equate success. A happy, fruitful relationship equates success, all right? So you see a lot of people who deal with the damage, are miserable, but they're still in the relationship. Let's not, congratulate that. Let's not glorify that in any kind of way. So now that we understand it's about fruitful happiness, purpose in that relationship, the number one thing is healing. Having to heal from your past. I think most people, even if they got in their relationship without healing first, at some point had to do the work if they were going to survive and be able to stay together. They weren't going to be able to push it all the way through and again, be happy, fruitful, purposeful without healing. And so much of the dysfunction that we experience in our relationships stem from previous experiences, whether that be childhood, a previous relationship. There's always something that we're dragging into that relationship. And, I'm a firm believer that because of the whole boyfriend-girlfriend dynamic, we've made it harder on marriage. Because by the time people even get to someone that they could marry, they've been beaten down so much emotionally that some people don't have the energy and willingness to fight at that moment. And it seems too scary because the person that is truly best for you makes you feel more vulnerable than anyone else will. And so now, if you are still holding on to trauma, you are more than likely going to run from that, sabotage that. Like you have got to really have a strong support system to even weather that storm if you have yet to have heal. So healing is huge, huge part of it. The other foundation I would say is finding and loving yourself. The reality is if you don't know who you are, then you don't know who belongs in your life. You don't know who's the right fit. You don't know who you align with properly as you move forward. And so too many people are dating or establishing relationships trying to be something they're not, or not tapping into their true self. And so now you get this, and to put it in the context of women, you get this guy to fall for you, but who he fell for is not a woman you can sustain because you're not really that woman. And so now at some point, the true colors come out. He gets mad. You're frustrated with him. And now the whole thing blows up. So better to save yourself that headache by being your true authentic self from the jump, and then see who's the guy who truly embraces that. And loving yourself, because without loving yourself, you are more than likely going to settle. You are more than likely going to accept dysfunctional relationships. You're going to entertain and tolerate men who don't belong in your life. So it's important to not just know yourself, but love yourself as well. And be confident in knowing that, listen, the true you is going to be embraced by a man who truly loves that woman, And so you don't have to try to fit into everyone else's box. But let me add to, when it comes to knowing yourself and loving yourself, that doesn't mean accepting a flaw as if it can't be correctable. All right. It isn't, oh, well, I just have a bad attitude, or I'm just super blunt. No, you're rude and you're negative. Okay. Like don't play this. Oh, that's just how I am. No, that's a correctable issue that needs improvement. So let's identify what are the actual flaws that need to be corrected versus who we are. So, and just to give an example, who you are may be a woman who loves nature. You love to go outside. You like traveling. That's who you are. But again, that bad attitude, that's who you became because you haven't resolved past trauma, because you haven't flushed out the negative energy from your spirit. So recognize the difference between who you are and who you become due to all these outside influences or negative influences. And so the last thing I would say, and we can name a lot of different things, but the biggest foundational piece after that is connection. And I believe that, again, I'm a firm believer that women know connection, but unfortunately, they throw it out the window when they see something that they like, or when they want a reason to hold on to something that they don't belong in. So essentially,
break those two down, because those were super powerful.
All right. So when it's something that you like, so for example, women know, and to give some context to connection, to me, that is a deeper spiritual occurrence. It's like your spirit recognizing its match. And it's that person you can truly be yourself with, be vulnerable with. It's a next level type of vibe, type of energy, because again, we can meet a lot of people we like. We may love a lot of people. We do not feel a connection with everybody. All right. That's a very unique experience. And women, again, because you guys are so in tune emotionally, spiritually, like women have a great sense of, or a great ability to sense, to feel things. So you guys can feel when that connection is there, when it's not. But now she meets a guy, and let's say his resume is exactly what she wanted. Let's say, just to give an example, he's successful, he's tall, he looks great, an amazing guy on paper. And this woman says, oh my gosh, I cannot pass this up. I want this. And so even in your interaction with him, the connection's not there. But your desire for him is so strong, you're just falling for the hype in the moment. Okay, all the smoke and mirrors right now, but once that goes away, you're not going to be happy here. And then in regards to ignoring it when it's something that you want to hold on to and not leave, again, it goes back to women being in those relationships where they're settling, where they know this guy's not for them. They now ignore the fact that they know a connection does not exist because, again, the fear of being alone, the fear of starting all over, the fear of aging. Let's be real. A lot of women, due to the fear of aging, rush into relationships and hold on to men that don't belong in their lives. And so all these different fears causes her to try to rationalize past connection, and even more importantly, she rationalizes past her intuition. Because in knowing connection for women, they know their intuition. They know their intuition is saying this guy's not it, but they want so bad to make this work, so they give themselves all the reasons to push forward anyway.
Oh my God, I love that so much. And I heard you say that connection cannot be built and connection cannot be destroyed. It's one of those, you either have it or you don't. Can you take me through that? Because I think people, and I've also heard you say, people try to rationalize the connection on if they don't necessarily have it and why they're with somebody. And so explain to me that on like why we can never rationalize it. And then also how we rationalize our intuition that's telling us that we should be settling.
Mm-hmm. So now with connection being there or it's not. So again, there's a couple ways to look at this. One, for anyone who's spiritual, there's a belief that says things happen in the spirit before they happen in the physical. Okay. And so if that is a true dynamic, then it would make perfect sense that the connection already existed. It didn't come about physically first. It existed in the spiritual. And again, that's why I said it's our spirits recognizing the match, recognizing that person it can bond with, so to speak. And so there's that aspect of it, but also the fact that if you sit down and you speak to people who have experienced connection, the story is always the same. It's always this something that they felt very quickly. It didn't take months, years for them to figure it out. It was very initial, first maybe conversation, first day, first week. It was very in the beginning. And again, these people could have stories where they fall apart because having a connection doesn't guarantee two people are going to be together, because there's so many things that throw the situation off. But these people could fall apart. It could be 10, 20 years. They come back together and it's like they never stop talking. There's nothing that you can do to change that. You can run from it. You can be in denial of it, but it's still there, And so when we try to rationalize past connection, well, unfortunately, society has taught us or taught many people to have relationships for business purposes, to have relationships just for the sake of family structure. And not saying that these things don't play a role, but they don't teach people about connection. Even when people come to me and say, well, arranged marriages are the way to go because they have such a low divorce rate. And I'm like, listen, have you ever sat down with women in arranged marriages? I can tell you, I've seen communities of them where they look like their spirit is gone, where they're not happy. Now, I'm not saying that's every arranged marriage, but what I'm saying to you is you can't force two people together and think it's just going to be happy and great. Yes, they may find a way to manage and cope, but I am not here to encourage people to just tolerate a relationship. I want two people to flourish within a relationship. And that means getting with that person that you truly connect with. And so a lot of people just don't understand the concept. It's foreign to them, and many have yet to experience it. So it's very hard to fully grasp this when you haven't been hit with it yet. But anyone who's experienced connection, this resonates with them. I say it's like having an orgasm for a woman. It's like once you had it, I can't really explain.
Back, there's no going back.
Exactly. It's like when it happens, you're gonna know. Plain and simple. Yeah. All right. And now, which brings me to the rationalization past intuition. What happens now is women confuse intuition and fear. All right. And they allow fear to overrun their intuition. Now, I explain to women, listen, the difference between fear and intuition is that fear requires logic. Fear requires you to analyze. Well, I can't do this because I might, this might happen. I can't take this jump because I might fall. I can't invest here because I might go broke. It's the logic that's making you fearful of the negative consequences. Intuition requires no logic. Intuition is independent of any facts. You can be in a room, the whole environment can look great, and something in you, in your spirit says, leave. You don't belong here. You need to go. Something is wrong. That's intuition. And so what happens with a lot of women is They might meet this man, they might feel this connection, but now the analyzation comes in. Now the logic of, well, wait a minute, what if he's just playing games? What if I'm wrong? I've been wrong about these men before. How can I trust this guy? All of this starts to overrun them, and now they allow that to pull them out of the situation or to sabotage it because they can't allow themselves to believe it. And again, that also stems from that lack of healing that has now contaminated their thinking. And that's why I tell women, or I encourage women, stop analyzing, start feeling. A woman's power is in feeling. Like, just quiet yourself for a second, visualize the moment, visualize what's going on, and tell me what you're feeling. Because when you start to get in your own head, women will drive themselves insane getting inside their own head and coming up with all these different possible conclusions. No, what do you feel? What do you sense? Because I've yet to find a woman who says her intuition is wrong. So the key is we need to learn how to remove the fear, tap into the intuition, and walk confidently in it.
I love that, because you're not just saying feel it, because there is something to, like, right, the intoxication of love or the intoxication of attraction. You know, if you're just like, okay, I feel it. Oh, I'm really turned on by him. And then you go into it. But there's a big difference between that and then sitting and listening to your gut intuition. Okay, so let's assume someone's found the connection and they've gone through it and they've analyzed, but they've also allowed themselves to feel that, in touch with their intuition, and everything seems great. And you really believe this is the right person. And then you get into the relationship, and then 5-10 years down the line, you end up being completely splintered. What are the hurdles that you find in your practice that when you speak to people, where people just, like, they keep stumbling over these things, and this is what ends up splintering the relationship 5 or 10 years down the line?
Okay. Number one, a lack of emotional maturity. So what I have found is, with men and women, we have not learned how to manage our emotions. And especially in today's society, it has become even more reactive. People get offended, they react. People see something, they react. There is no processing. There is no taking a step back. So now when you act that way within a relationship, imagine your partner does something, you could interpret it wrong, you react, you now say something hurtful in that moment because you're mad. You don't really mean it, but that's how you felt in that moment. Now they're hurt by it. Now they're damaged. Now they retaliate. And then boom, the cycle goes from there. And what we have to understand is, especially within relationships where two people have a connection, this is the person who can hurt you the most and make you the happiest. That's the scary thing about it. It's like they have the power, in a sense, to crush you, but to make you feel like no other person can. And so I always say the person that a woman loves most has the least room for error. So, like, when you see relationships where a woman is constantly being mistreated, but she keeps going back to him and she says, well, because I love him. No, you don't love him. You have an unhealthy attachment to him. Your ability to continuously take that mistreatment and that toxic behavior and go back to him shows me it's not love. When we're loving someone and we're really into them, one little mistake can hurt like no other. And again, going back to the emotional maturity, if you don't learn how to not just react, how to communicate before we assume, before we come to our own conclusions, that can easily derail the relationship. So I definitely think a lack of emotional maturity. I also think lack of healing. Lack of healing is going to always be a thorn in the side of relationships. All right. Because again, sometimes our partners do things that trigger us, but that trigger stems from past trauma we haven't resolved. All right. And they're not even aware sometimes of what they did or how it's impacting us. And so if we don't learn how to let go of our past traumas and issues and hurts, we run a high risk of things going left in that relationship, especially with someone we have a connection with. And like I said, the person you have a connection with, everything's magnified. So it's going to hit harder with them. So the third thing is unrealistic expectations of people and our partners. And what I mean by that is this idea of, it's like you said, someone meets a connection, they think, okay, we're good now, we're going to succeed. No. You're still two human beings. You are still two people who can fall short at any time, at any day. If we don't give grace to each other, we are going to have a big problem here. We've got to recognize the difference between the person who does not belong in our life and continues to do wrong and the person who does belong in our life but makes mistakes.
Right.
Okay?
Yes.
And so once we know, listen, we have a connection. I know that I want to go through the storms with you. You're the person that I'm supposed to be with. Now let's remember that in our moment of struggle. Because again, everyone's going to make a mistake. You're going to do something, especially the longer you've been together. You're going to mess up some way, somehow. You may say something you shouldn't have. You may insult them in a way, something. It happens, but there needs to be grace and understanding. We are human beings. We're going to fall short. We got to embrace that forgiveness always with our partner. And again, communicate. And that's the other thing. Communication would be the other pitfall. A lack of proper communication can derail any situation. And so you got to be willing and establish very early on a willingness and a safe space for both partners to be able to talk about anything. We should not have to hold on to how we're feeling with each other, because if we do, that is a recipe for disaster.
Hey, thank you for watching this video. Be sure to check this one out right here, and I'll see you there. Peace is something that men crave. And to be quite honest with you, a lot of men aren't getting it. A lot of men are in a relationship with a woman who may be a good woman, quote unquote, but that relationship is not